The taste of copper flooded my mouth as my mother's voice cut through the dinner conversation. The greatest gift for your brother's wedding is you vanishing from this family forever. She didn't whisper it, didn't pull me aside, just said it at the table where I'd spent 3 months color-coordinating napkins and negotiating with florists, her fork still poised over her chicken like she'd commented on the weather. My brother Dorian kept chewing. My father reached for his wine glass. Elise, my brother's fiancée, stared at her plate like the pattern might offer her an escape route. The wedding binder sat at my elbow. 17 tabs, each one representing a problem I'd solved, a vendor I'd sweet-talked into payment plans, a detail I'd handled while everyone else just added to the wish list. My savings account statement was folded inside the back cover, the one that used to show $12,000 before I started covering their minor expenses. "Did you hear me?" My mother set down her fork with that specific click that meant the conversation was over, not starting. "I heard you," I wanted to say. "I've been hearing you my whole life." But my throat had closed up the way it does when you realize something you've always suspected is being said out loud for the first time. Before I tell you how their perfect wedding collapsed in exactly 72 hours, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and hit subscribe so we can meet here every day for more stories like this. My name is Luna, I'm 29, and I used to believe making myself invisible would make me essential. This is the story of how I learned the difference. Growing up in Erie, Pennsylvania, our family ran a small grocery store on the east side. The kind of place where locals knew which day we got fresh bread and which checkout line moved fastest. From the outside, we looked like any other working family. Parents who showed up early, kids who helped out, a business that kept the lights on. But inside our house, everything tilted in one direction, toward Dorian. My mother, Mara, had this way of talking about my brother that made every sentence sound like a press release. My mother came from a traditional family where sons inherited everything. That worldview never left her, even when it didn't match our reality. When he graduated law school, she called 17 relatives. When I landed my first major freelance contract, she asked if it paid as well as real jobs. My father, Colin, didn't play favorites as loudly, but his silence said plenty. Dorian's opinions got discussion. Mine got nods. I learned early that making noise just created friction, so I got good at filling gaps nobody mentioned existed. Inventory management, vendor relations, the social media that actually brought in new customers. I handled it quietly while Dorian built his law career in Pittsburgh, visiting on holidays with stories about cases and billable hours. 3 years ago, I had a chance to take a marketing director position with a firm in Cleveland. $42,000 a year, benefits. The kind of stability that would have let me finally move into a place that wasn't above someone's garage. But that was the same month our store hit rough water. Distributors tightening terms, a new Walmart pulling customers away, my parents' retirement account looking thinner every time my father mentioned it at dinner. My mother called me crying on a Tuesday. We might lose everything. I canceled the Cleveland interview that afternoon. For 6 months, I rebuilt their customer base from scratch, created a loyalty program, organized community events, convinced local food bloggers to feature us. I tracked every metric, adjusted every strategy, watched the numbers climb back to sustainable. The night we finally broke even, I actually thought maybe this time they'd see what I'd done. 2 weeks later, my parents called a family meeting. Mara folded her hands on the table like she was announcing election results. "We've decided Dorian should take over the store when we retire. He's got the business sense for it." Dorian had spent maybe 40 hours total in that store during the entire crisis. He didn't know our vendor contracts, our customer base, which products moved and which ones sat, but he got the inheritance anyway, wrapped up with praise about his natural leadership. The crack that formed in my chest that day, I felt it widen every time I swallowed my disappointment and kept showing up. Then came the wedding. Dorian proposed to Elise in September, and by October the planning had somehow become entirely my responsibility. Not through discussion, just through assumption. My mother would call with venue requirements. Elise would text me Pinterest boards at midnight. Dorian would add expensive requests like I had a magic checkbook that refilled itself. The band needs to play until 2 a.m. We want those imported garden roses, the ones from that wedding you showed us. Can you handle the invitations and the seating chart and coordinate the rehearsal dinner? Every time I suggested we scale back or stick to the budget, my mother's face would tighten. This is your brother's only wedding, Luna. Don't be difficult. I stretched my freelance schedule to the breaking point, taking client calls between dress fittings and squeezing design work into the hours after vendor meetings. When the deposits started piling up, I pulled from my own savings. Just temporarily, I told myself. They'd pay me back once things settled. $10,000 disappeared from my account in 3 months. One afternoon in late January, I brought them the invitation design I'd spent 12 hours perfecting. Custom calligraphy, elegant layout, their chosen color scheme translated into something actually printable. My mother glanced at it for maybe 15 seconds before pointing to a microscopic spacing issue near the bottom. "Sloppy," she said, sliding it back across the table. I expected better. Dorian smirked from the couch. Classic Luna. My father didn't look up from the television. I drove to the coffee shop where I'd been meeting Mason, my friend since college, and sank into the corner booth like my bones had given up. He took one look at my face and ordered me the strongest coffee they made. "You look like you've been running on fumes," he said gently. "Just need to get through this wedding." I wrapped both hands around the mug, even though the coffee was too hot to drink. Once it's over, maybe they'll finally appreciate. They won't. Mason's voice was kind but firm. "Luna, you're building something beautiful in a place that keeps tearing it down." His words stuck in my mind during the drive home, playing on repeat while I updated the vendor spreadsheet and confirmed the catering order, and sent Dorian the revised timeline he wouldn't read. The breaking point came at the final menu tasting, 1 week before the wedding. It was late February, and the wedding was scheduled for the first Saturday in March. I'd spent hours with the caterer designing a menu that felt elegant without destroying what remained of anyone's budget. Herb-roasted chicken with a wine reduction, seasonal vegetables, a salad with that particular kind of cheese Elise loved. Food that tasted like it cost twice what we were paying. Dorian cut into his chicken, took one bite, and pushed the plate away. "This is basic. We need lobster and real champagne, not whatever cheap stuff you picked." "The champagne is from the same vineyard you chose," I said evenly, "and we already paid the deposits. Lobster would triple the cost." My mother nodded immediately toward Dorian. "She's right. Fix it, Luna." Something in my chest pulled tight. I've already put in $10,000 of my own money. I don't have more to give. Dorian leaned back in his chair with that particular expression he used in court, the one that said he'd already won and was just waiting for everyone to realize it. "Stop cutting corners on my wedding. Figure it out." I looked at each of them. My mother's expectant face, my father's deliberate disinterest, Elise's apologetic silence, Dorian's cold certainty, and I felt something inside me go completely still. The next morning, Dorian posted in a local community Facebook group, "My sister is ruining our wedding with her laziness and cheap decisions. Some people just can't handle responsibility." Neighbors I'd helped with store discounts for years filled the comments, people calling me selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. My phone buzzed with screenshots from people who thought I should know what was being said. That was the moment the stillness turned to clarity. The dinner where everything finally broke happened on a Thursday. My mother had made her special occasion roasted chicken, the same meal she served for every family milestone, like the repetition made it meaningful, but nobody was eating. Dorian scrolled through wedding vendor websites on his phone. Elise folded and refolded her napkin. My father studied his wine glass like it held answers. I'd spent the entire day managing a crisis with the photographer, who'd nearly backed out after Dorian called him 4 times in 2 hours with contradictory instructions. I'd smoothed it over, confirmed the timeline, protected the booking I'd fought to get at a price we could almost afford. I thought tonight I'd finally lay out the reality of our financial situation, show them exactly what I'd paid, what remained, why we couldn't keep adding upgrades like money materialized out of guilt and exhaustion. But Dorian didn't let me open my planner. "We need to make some changes," he announced. "Upgrade the bar to top shelf everything. Book that photographer from Pittsburgh that Elise wants, the expensive one, and swap the chicken for lobster." I closed the planner slowly. There's no money for upgrades. I've already paid $10,000 out of my savings. The deposits are locked in. Dorian barely looked up. "You always panic about money. Just figure it out." My mother set down her fork with a sharp clink. "He's right. Why are you making this so difficult?" The words came out quieter than I intended. "I'm not making it difficult. I'm telling you I'm out of money. I've paid for half this wedding myself, and I can't cover anything else." My father finally looked up from his wine, but only to shake his head with disappointment. "This is your brother's once-in-a-lifetime day. Don't ruin it because you're bad at budgeting." The room went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Ruin it. As if I hadn't spent 3 months giving up sleep and savings and client work to build their perfect day. As if the problem was my incompetence rather than their endless entitlement. "I can't give you what you're asking for," I said. My mother leaned forward, her voice dropping to that particular tone she used when she wanted to sound reasonable while saying something cruel. "Then maybe the greatest gift you can give your brother's wedding is you vanishing from this family forever." Elise's eyes went wide. Dorian kept scrolling on his phone like his mother hadn't just erased his sister from the family tree. My father folded his napkin in precise thirds and set it beside his plate. The conversation concluded by consensus. Something inside me didn't shatter. It just went quiet. I stood up, pushed my chair back, walked to my room without saying another word. The night air coming through my window felt cleaner than the air inside that house had in years. I pulled my suitcase from the closet and started packing. Clothes, documents, my laptop, anything that had only ever belonged to me. Each item I added felt like taking back a piece of myself I'd been giving away in tiny increments for as long as I could remember. When I walked out the front door at 11:47 p.m., it clicked shut behind me with a sound that felt less like an ending and more like the first true thing I'd heard all day. I drove 20 minutes to a hotel near the interstate and checked into a room that smelled like industrial cleaner and anonymity. I sat in my car in the hotel parking lot for a moment with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel. They weren't shaking. For the first time in months, maybe years, my hands were completely steady. By morning, the sun rose over Erie like it always did, indifferent to family drama and collapsed expectations. I'd spent the night in that hotel room, sleeping better than I had in weeks. When I woke up, I didn't feel angry or sad. I just felt clear. The clarity came with a list. First call, the caterer. I need to cancel all services for the Hart Morrison wedding. The coordinator's voice filled with professional concern. There will be penalty fees. That's fine. Refund whatever portion you can and release the date. Second call, the florist. She recognized my voice immediately. "Luna, is everything okay?" "Something's changed. I need to cancel the order. Please refund whatever you can from my deposit." Third call, the band. They'd already cashed the check, but banks have dispute processes for services not rendered. I filed the paperwork before lunch. By 2 p.m., I'd recovered $8,400 of my $10,000. Not by destroying anything, not by plotting elaborate revenge, just by quietly dismantling everything I'd personally built and paid for. My phone started buzzing around 3 p.m. My mother, my father, Elise, Dorian. I watched each call go to voicemail, not because I wanted to torture them, but because I'd spent years answering every demand immediately, and silence was the first boundary I'd ever allowed myself to hold. I moved into a small studio apartment I'd been renting but barely using, too busy managing everyone else's life to live my own. That evening, I stood in the center of the space looking at bare walls and unpacked boxes and half-finished freelance projects, and for the first time, the mess was entirely mine. The wedding day arrived on Saturday with clear skies and temperatures perfect for outdoor photos. I didn't go to the venue, didn't drive past it, didn't watch from a distance. I opened my windows, made coffee, and let my absence speak for itself. But the chaos still found me through my phone. 10:15 a.m. voicemail from my mother, her voice sharp with panic. "Luna, the flowers aren't here. The florist says the order was canceled. Call them back right now." 10:47 a.m. My father, breathless. "The band isn't coming. The venue says there's no catering. What did you do?" 11:23 a.m. Dorian, his voice tight with rage. "You ruined everything. Fix this or don't bother coming back home. Actually, don't come back at all." I almost laughed at that last one. After all, vanishing forever was exactly what they'd requested. While they spiraled, guests arrived at the venue expecting a wedding. Mason's cousin Cheryl was invited, and she called him with updates throughout the day. Cheryl was texting Mason photos and play-by-play descriptions from inside the venue, and he was forwarding me the highlights, not to gloat, just to keep me informed. He relayed them to me in careful, gentle messages, never gloating, just letting me know what my silence had created. The venue looked beautiful. The space itself was lovely, all those architectural details and natural light they'd insisted on. But the round tables sat bare, except for white linens that suddenly looked cheap, without centerpieces. The stage in the back corner stood empty. No microphones, no instruments, no sound equipment. And the kitchen staff were prepping for a different event entirely, one with an actual catering contract. By noon, the panic had reached full volume. Elise cried in the bathroom while her bridesmaids tried to comfort her. My mother paced the hallway, cornering anyone in a venue uniform, demanding answers. My father kept calling vendors, his voice getting louder with each conversation that went nowhere. And Dorian stood in the center of the empty room, staring around like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. He tried to take control, tried to use that authoritative voice that worked in courtrooms. "Everyone stay calm. This is just a mix-up. We'll figure it out." But there's no arguing with vendors who were never booked and caterers who were never paid. His confidence crumbled under the weight of reality. Guests whispered to each other. Some left quietly. Others stayed out of morbid curiosity or because they'd driven too far to turn around. A kid in the second row asked loudly, "Is there at least going to be cake?" There wasn't. By 1 p.m., the venue coordinator approached my mother with a clipboard and an expression of professional sympathy. "Without vendors present and no food service, we'll need to discuss event cancellation terms." The wedding was officially over. 3 months of planning, $10,000 of my money, countless hours of my labor. All of it collapsed in the time it took for people to realize nobody had actually paid for anything to happen. And I wasn't there to see any of it. I didn't need to be. Their voices in my voicemail told me everything, each message a small documentary of consequences finally arriving. In the middle of the chaos, one text stood out from the flood. Mason. "Whatever's happening right now, I hope you're breathing easier." I was. That afternoon, I stood on the small balcony of my apartment. The air was warm, touched with the particular softness of late spring. Cars moved below, people walked dogs, a neighbor watered plants. Life continued, completely unbothered by the Hart family wedding disaster. I thought about every moment I'd been dismissed, every late night tweaking seating charts, every insult disguised as standards, every reminder that I was the daughter who didn't quite measure up. And then I thought about my mother's words at that dinner table. "The greatest gift is you vanishing from this family forever." For the first time, the sentence didn't hurt. It felt accurate. A gift, just not the one they'd meant to give. By evening, my voicemail was full. Some messages were angry, some panicked, some just exhausted. My father's last one sounded defeated. "Luna, we need to talk about fixing this." Not one of them apologized. Not one asked if I was okay. Every single message was about what I could do for them. I turned off my phone. Then I opened my laptop and drafted an email I'd been avoiding for months, an inquiry to a realtor in Asheville about available apartments. I'd visited the city once 2 years ago, fallen in love with it, and never believed I deserved to start over somewhere that felt like possibility instead of obligation. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. 2 weeks later, I moved to Asheville. Not dramatically, not in secret. Just quietly with 2 suitcases and the kind of calm that comes after you stop trying to convince people to value you. My new apartment was small but filled with light, real light, the kind that made me realize how dark my life in Erie had been. I set up my desk by the window, unpacked my design software, and started taking on clients I'd been too exhausted to pursue before. Meanwhile, Erie kept unraveling without me. Mason sent updates, never gloating, just keeping me informed. The store lost its main distributor after my parents missed 2 payment deadlines. The kind of thing I used to catch and handle before it became a crisis. My father tried to manage the social media accounts I'd built but posted at random times with no strategy, and engagement dropped by 60% in a month. Dorian attempted to step in, but management requires more than confidence and a law degree. Within 3 months, my parents sold the store at a loss. I saw the real estate listing online. Established neighborhood grocery needs committed ownership. They sold the house 2 months after that. I found that listing too. Charming family home. Well loved. As for Dorian and Elise, she broke off the engagement that July. Mason heard through mutual friends that she returned the ring by mail and moved back to her hometown. They never attempted to reschedule the wedding. In Asheville, my life grew in small, deliberate ways. I joined a local networking group for freelancers and met people who valued collaboration over competition. My income stabilized, then grew beyond what I'd been making while juggling my family's constant demands. I found a hiking trail I loved, a coffee shop that knew my order, a version of myself I hadn't had space to meet before. One morning, a letter arrived, my mother's handwriting, still precise. She wrote about my father's health, about how hard things had been, about family needing to stick together. The letter mentioned his blood pressure issues and a minor health scare. Though she didn't provide details, it wasn't an apology. It was a pull, the same gravity I'd been orbiting my entire life. I wrote back. Short, polite, final, I wished them well. I hoped my father's health improved. But I wasn't coming back. I haven't spoken to any of them since that letter. The silence feels like its own kind of answer. Because healing isn't the same as returning, and peace isn't the same as reconciliation. Looking back now, I don't feel triumph or bitterness. I just feel relief. Leaving wasn't the punishment they imagined. It was the beginning of a life that finally belonged to me. Their wedding collapsed. The store followed. The family structure that required my invisible labor to function fell apart. And the version of me, who kept trying to earn love through exhaustion, doesn't exist anymore. What remains is quieter, stronger, and no longer afraid to choose peace over permission. If any part of my story sounds familiar, if you've ever been the one holding everything together while being told you're not doing enough, drop a comment. Share what you're working through. None of us should feel alone in this. And if you want more stories about finding yourself after losing everything you thought mattered, hit that subscribe button. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.